They told her to never come back to Savannah, and now she finally understands why. A pregnant woman, 7 months along, and her loyal German shepherd fled to this old, abandoned family building, desperate to start over. But when her dog started growling at the second-floor library wall, she discovered a hidden lock she never knew existed. Behind it, an old safe forgotten for more than a century. And what was inside would expose a secret the city tried to bury, a secret that could destroy powerful people still living in Savannah today. Before we begin this story, where are you watching from? Comment your city, state, or country below. It always blows our mind how far these stories travel. Rain hammered the floor to asphalt in relentless diagonal sheets, warm and heavy like tropical breath. The streetlights of Orlando blurring into golden streaks through the windshield as the wipers fought a hopeless battle against the storm. Inside that battered silver Honda Civic, a 28-year-old woman named Emily Carter sat rigid behind the wheel. Her knuckles white, her pulse too loud, her breathing shallow and uneven, like someone running underwater. Emily had always been slender in a frail way, like a willow branch that bends before it breaks, with pale skin that bruised easily and long brown hair that used to fall in soft curls down her back before the stress of the last year forced her to keep it tied in a low, messy bun every single day. Her eyes, a deep hazel amber, used to sparkle when she laughed, but months of fear had dimmed that light to something exhausted, something watchful, something that flinched at every beep of a phone, every slammed door, every unexpected footstep behind her. 7 months pregnant, her belly was round and heavy. A new small life pressing from the inside with gentle kicks, sometimes reminding her that she was not alone, sometimes reminding her that she had a duty to survive. She kept one hand low over her abdomen as she drove, as if the baby could only stay safe if she physically shielded it, as if her palm itself was the barrier between her child and the violence behind her. In the back seat, there was one companion, one creature who had never betrayed her, one constant, one soldier of loyalty. His name was Rex, a German shepherd, now 4 years old, with muscular legs, golden brown fur with the classic black saddle, marking sharp, intelligent eyes that were always scanning for danger, and a deep, defensive loyalty that came from having been raised with Emily since he was a tiny, fluffy 8-week-old pup. Rex had never been a playful, clownish dog. Even as a puppy, he sat serious, ears always pricked forward, as though he had been born understanding that the world contained danger. Some dogs wagged tails at strangers. Rex watched strangers like he was memorizing escape routes. Emily used to tease that he was an old soul in a dog body. Tonight, Rex's nose quivered, every few minutes nostrils flaring at the scent of fear coming off his human, and every once in a while the deep rumble of a growl vibrated in his chest, not because there was a threat in the car, but because the memory of a threat still clung to the woman he loved. Emily's ex-husband Mark was a man she had once believed to be gentle. He was tall, almost 6'2", with the kind of jawline magazines like to photograph, short sandy hair and eyes that could turn from charm to cruelty with a switch as fast as lightning. He worked in medical sales, wore crisp suits, had the smile of a man who always won, and in the beginning that confidence had felt like safety. His colleagues saw him as charismatic. Neighbors saw him as polite. But behind closed doors he was a man who needed control like oxygen. At first it was comments, then restrictions, then physical rage. The worst moment was 6 months ago, when he slammed her into a cabinet so hard a ceramic mug broke on the counter from the shockwave, and she stood there with ceramic shards digging into her palm while he hissed through clenched teeth that she would never leave him because he would always find her. The next morning she woke up and heard him humming while making coffee like nothing happened. That was the moment something inside her cracked like a branch under a boot heel, and the crack had spread like a fault line every day since. Tonight she finally ran. She had waited until he left the house for a work dinner. She had stuffed 2 duffel bags with only essentials, prenatal vitamins, a few maternity clothes, some cash. She had slowly saved in secret hiding places around the house, inside tampon boxes stitched in the lining under the couch cushion, in a Ziploc bag under the garden soil. In a flower pot, she dug them all out tonight like digging up the bones of old versions of herself. She had Rex hop into the car. And she had driven. She didn't leave a note. She didn't take her wedding ring. She left the house lights on so it would look like someone was still home. She left the back patio door slightly ajar so Rex could pretend he slipped outside for a minute and she would be coming back any second. She wanted to vanish before Mark realized she had ever gone. The storm was almost biblical, like the sky itself wanted to wash away Florida behind her. Emily guided the car north on the interstate. She knew exactly where she was going, Savannah, Georgia. She had not been there since she was 13. That one summer when life was still pure, when her mother was alive, when her father laughed more than he yelled, when nothing felt impossible, yet she had spent it with her great-grandfather who lived in Savannah decades ago. That man had owned a strange old building on Oglethorpe Avenue, an old library building that the town called haunted. When the man died, the building was passed down through legal tangles and eventually landed in Emily's name at age 21. But she had not returned. She had buried the memory. But tonight, desperation had turned the past into a lifeline. The road stretched and thunder crashed like falling boulders. Emily's thoughts crowded, pressing her chest tight. What if Mark found her? What if he placed a tracker in her car? What if she gave birth alone in a strange building, in a strange city? What if she was making her world smaller instead of safer? She chewed her lip until it bled, then wiped the blood with the back of her hand, then felt Rex nudge her elbow gently with his nose. His silent message was clear: keep going. Savannah appeared just past midnight. The rain softened into mist, then into nothing, leaving only the glossy sheen of wet roads reflecting the antique street lamps of historic downtown. Emily drove through the quiet squares, Spanish moss hanging like ghost hair from the live oaks, the air thick with the smell of river mud and old bricks. She felt a strange throb in her chest. This place was old. This place remembered things. This place felt like memory preserved inside honey. She found the exact street, Oglethorpe Avenue, and the exact building, a 2-story brick structure with green-painted shutters and a heavy wooden door. It looked abandoned for decades. But the brass key mailed to her by the old family attorney 5 years ago when he retired sat cold in her pocket. She parked. She sat there for a long minute, engine ticking as it cooled, feeling the future pressing on her from the front and the past pulling her back from behind. Then she exhaled, wiped her face with her sleeve, whispered, "Just keep breathing," and stepped out into the wet night with Rex at her heel. She lifted the old key with a trembling hand, and the lock turned. She and Rex crossed the threshold of that forgotten library, and the air smelled like dust and secrets. And in her chest her baby fluttered like it could feel the future shifting. Early morning mist clung to the ancient bricks as the city of Savannah breathed quietly, the air still damp from rain the night before, the ocean wind rolling through the Spanish moss like whispered secrets. Emily Carter stood in front of the building that used to be her family's private library more than a century ago. She was 28, thin in a fragile way, with pale skin that looked nearly translucent under Savannah's pale light and long brown hair that had come loose from her bun during the night drive. She moved slowly because she was 7 months pregnant. The weight of her baby forced her to hold one hand under her belly as though she was cradling a globe, and every shift of her hips reminded her body she was no longer just one person, but two. Beneath the exhaustion in her hazel eyes there was also an odd flicker of hope, so faint it could be mistaken as fear. Beside her, Rex, the German shepherd, stood like a dark sentinel, golden brown fur, black saddle markings. Ears pointed forward, every muscle attentive, 4 years old, but with the seriousness of a disciplined soldier. He sniffed the airtail stiff, and Emily felt him vibrate with warning even before she saw anything wrong. The building looked even more decayed in daylight. Brick walls blotched with algae, window shutters hanging crooked like they were drunk on time, the heavy oak doors swollen from humidity. The building had a presence like a creature that had been sleeping 30 years, and wasn't sure if it wanted to wake up or not. Emily pulled the brass key from her pocket. This brass key had been mailed to her 3 years ago by the family's retired attorney, a man named William Hargrove, who was small-bald, always smelling faintly of lemon soap, and had been kind to her as a child. She hadn't known the lawyer well enough to describe his personality in detail, but she remembered his gentle voice the day her mother died, when he knelt and told her she was a brave young girl. That was why she saved the key instead of throwing it away. Now she lifted it to the old keyhole and turned. The lock clicked with the tired sigh of old metal. Rex let out a low, warning growl, not aggressive but alert, the way soldiers breathe before breaching a door. Emily swallowed hard and pushed the door open. Dust spiraled upward in slow, golden swirls as sunlight cut through the air like blades. Emily stepped inside Rex, close body shielding hers instinctively like he had been trained for protection, but he had never actually been trained. His protectiveness came simply because he loved her. Inside the old library, the air smelled like mold, old paper, and something newer like tuna or cheap canned pet food. The wooden floor creaked under every step. The bookshelves were still full, but warped entire rows of books sagging like wet cardboard. She had the sudden vivid memory of being 13, running her fingers along these bookshelves once when her great-grandfather had brought her here for one last summer. She remembered him as a tall, thin man with an elegant white mustache and hair slicked back with old-fashioned pomade, his voice calm and slow, his fingers stained with ink like a scholar. He had died only a year later, and after that her parents fell apart slowly, like sugar dissolving in water. But the building stayed locked up, forgotten. Rex pulled forward, nose lowered. Emily whispered his name, but he ignored her. He followed a scent. He led Emily deeper past a fallen chandelier lying like a skeleton on the floor, and through a narrow corridor where the wallpaper peeled away like dried skin. He stopped at a corner where the second-floor staircase began. Then he suddenly turned his head to the side and let out a guttural growl. Deeper this time, the kind of growl that said something wasn't right here. Emily knelt slowly, her belly heavy, one hand gripping the stair railing. She looked down at the dusty wooden floor where Rex sniffed. There, a partial shoe print, not old. The dust had been disturbed, very recently. And next to the footprint was a plastic container of store-brand cat food, half empty with crumbs scattered around it. Someone had been in here with food. Emily's throat tightened. The panic she had tried to push down all night came alive again, surging through her like electricity. She pressed one hand over her belly, breathing carefully, because panic made her chest tighten, and she could not let her body panic. She whispered loudly enough only for Rex to hear, "We're not alone." 1,000 fears collided all at once. Had Mark tracked her? Had someone been living here like a vagrant? Was this building not as forgotten as she thought? She looked at the door. They had closed it behind them, but the thought that someone might come in again made her spine crawl. Rex moved his head toward the staircase, ears up. He smelled someone upstairs. Emily's instinct screamed to leave to get back in the car to run, but she had run so far already. Her body trembled. She was so tired of running. And yet she was terrified of staying. She pressed her forehead against the old staircase railing, breathing slow. She remembered her therapist from 2 years ago, Dr. Pettis, a middle-aged woman with curly red hair whose glasses always slid down her nose and who had said once, "When a trauma survivor finally runs, every step feels like betrayal to the tiny part of them that still expects rescue from the abuser." Emily could almost hear that sentence now. She realized that she had been waiting for someone to rescue her all these years, her mother, her father, then Mark. No one ever did. So, she rescued herself. Emily stood up, spine straightening a little. She whispered to Rex, "We will search, but slow." She gripped the railing and began walking toward the second floor. Rex moved one cautious step at a time next to her. Emily's heart hammered so loud that each thump seemed to echo inside the hollow building. She kept telling herself the same sentence with every step like a mantra, "I am here. He's gone. I am here. He's gone." But her brain also whispered doubt. What if someone else dangerous is here now? What if you put your baby into a new danger? At the top of the stairs, the landing was quiet. The building moaned old wood shifting. Emily's eyes scanned the hallway. Then she saw at one of the interior library doors slightly ajar, like someone had left in a hurry. Rex sniffed the air toward that door, but didn't growl this time. Emily sensed he was detecting someone who had been here, not someone who was still here. She inched closer. The room beyond was an old reading room. The windows cracked, the curtains shredded, tables covered in mold. And on one table was something that shouldn't have been there, a recently printed local newspaper. Not ancient, not from 30 years ago, but from 2 days ago. Emily stood frozen. Her throat felt like sand. Someone had been living here. Maybe still living here. They weren't just passing through, they were using this place. Rex suddenly turned and ran to the other corner of the room, sniffing at a pile of old burlap sacks that had been pushed aside. He pawed at them aggressively. And behind those sacks, Emily saw a small hole in the floorboards, almost like someone had been trying to pry them open. She pressed her hand to her chest and whispered to herself, "What is this place now?" Emily backed out slowly, then closed the interior library door behind her. Her whole body shook. She would have to decide soon, stay here and try to reclaim this building, or abandon it and find another place. But for tonight, she had nowhere else. She would have to create some form of safety here. She returned downstairs, Rex beside her like a shadow. She locked the front door, then pushed an old heavy bookshelf against it. She found a dusty sofa to rest on. Rex lay at her feet, eyes open, guarding. Emily placed both hands on her belly and whispered, half in fear and half in promise, "We are safe for tonight. I will make this place ours again." But she couldn't shake the chill down her spine. Someone else had already been making this place theirs. Emily barely slept on that dusty sofa. Her body floated between shallow dreams and sudden jerks of fear the entire night, and every time she opened her eyes, she saw Rex sitting up, alert, ears forward, watching the shadows like a soldier guarding a perimeter. By dawn, the light slanted through the broken shutters in long stripes, pale and weak, illuminating motes of dust drifting like tiny ghosts in slow motion. Emily's lower back throbbed from the stiffness of the couch and the weight of the baby, and when she sat up, Rex immediately rose with her, stretching his front leg's tail, giving one single, slow wag just to show he was here, watching ready. She rubbed her hand over her belly and whispered, "We're okay. We're still safe. For now." But in truth, Emily's insides were coiled tight like a wire pulled too far. The discovery of those fresh footprints, the recently printed newspaper, the half-eaten pet food container, those details had rooted fear deep inside her chest. Someone had been coming here. Someone might come again. Yet she also felt strange ownership because this building was her family's, and she had run so far she refused to let fear push her again without knowing what she was running from. So instead of leaving, she climbed the staircase again, step by cautious step, Rex glued to her side, his breath steady, his muscles tight as if he understood that this moment was no longer merely survival, but a hunt for truth. Emily reached the second-floor landing and went to the old library door that she had shut last night. Her hand hovered over the handle a second longer than necessary, but then she opened it and stepped back into the room that smelled faintly of old tobacco and old paper, a smell she remembered her great-grandfather always carried. She moved to the bookshelves lining the back wall. This time she looked not at the books but at the wall itself. Her great-grandfather had been a peculiar man, thin like a dried reed. His white mustache curled up just slightly at the corners. His fingers always stained with ink from obsessive note-taking. His voice soft but precise like a clockmaker. His eyes both gentle and sharp, with the kind of intelligence that stays awake even when the body sleeps. Emily had seen his personal notes once as a child, pages full of tiny numbers and shapes and nautical words she didn't understand. This memory pushed her now. Maybe he had hidden more than just books up here. Rex's nose pressed suddenly against a crack in the wood panel, sniffing in concentrated bursts. His tail stiffened. Emily's pulse jumped. She ran her fingers along the paneling. The wood felt looser here than the rest. She pressed, and the panel shifted like a puzzle piece, sliding inward just enough to reveal a narrow cavity behind it. Her breath hitched. Heritage, truth, bloodline, history. Everything compressed into this moment. She reached inside. Her hand closed around something metal, smooth, cold, heavy. She pulled out a small iron safe no larger than a shoebox, the kind of thing rich men used in the 1800s for treasured items. Her great-grandfather must have placed it there himself. Emily carried it to the table. Rex sat beside her, panting softly. His head tilted like he understood the importance. The safe had an old wheel combination lock, not digital, but 3 concentric brass rings each engraved with numbers and tiny compass symbols. Emily felt her baby kick inside her like even the unborn life could feel the moment shift. She tried a few basic combinations, her mother's birth year, her own birthday, but nothing. So she reached again into the cavity, expecting nothing else, and found a small envelope sealed with brittle wax. She opened it carefully. The handwriting inside was unmistakable, elegant, narrow, impatient script, her great-grandfather's hand. The letter mentioned cipher routes, naval logs, and a particular phrase that stung her with recognition Civil War blockade runners. He had been studying coded maps used by Confederate blockade runners to smuggle goods in and out of Savannah during the Civil War. But his notes hinted that there was an even older layer, something that predated the war itself, something hidden for over a century. Under the letter lay a maps yellowed with age edges, curled, depicting the old port of Savannah. Some had dotted route lines drawn in ink, others had symbols she did not recognize. The last page was an old certificate dated 1894. Ownership transfer of Warehouse 17, Port of Savannah, signed under the Carter family seal. Emily's lungs filled with cold air like she had plunged under water. This library was not just a place where her ancestor archived books. This had been the front door to something. Her great-grandfather hadn't merely collected knowledge, he had hidden treasure or evidence or something powerful enough to be locked away for 130 years. She stared at the safe again. Her mind raced. It felt suddenly like the real danger was not who might still be coming in and out of this building to sleep or scavenge. The danger was what this place was sitting on top of family secrets. Old secrets, something someone else might also be seeking. Rex nudged the safe gently with his nose. Emily whispered to herself, "Why did he lock this? Why did he hide it here?" She turned the rings slowly, methodically. Then she remembered a detail, a number she saw on her great-grandfather's pocket watch the summer she visited at age 13. She remembered asking him why he always set his watch to 2017, even though it wasn't the real time. He had smiled, tapped his chest with his ink-stained finger, and said, "Sometimes are not hours, they are doors, my dear." She dialed to 117. There was a click. She froze. Then she slowly opened the safe. Inside more documents, and at the bottom one small old brass key. Not modern, not for a door like this house. It was the kind of key used for cargo locks, for crates, or for warehouse gates. She held that brass key like a weapon, or maybe like a crown, she wasn't sure which. She looked out the broken window to the direction of the Savannah River, dark and glittering under the daylight, and she whispered Warehouse 17. A sharp knock suddenly echoed through the building below. Emily's heart dropped. Rex shot upright, entire body, rigid ears, straight like spears. Emily slowly closed the safe, slid it under her shirt against her belly like she was protecting two lives now, the unborn baby and the secret. She whispered, "Shh, Rex," even though she herself felt like screaming. She crept back toward the stairs. Downstairs, through a slit between broken banister railings, she saw a man standing on the front porch outside the main door, visible through a narrow crack between the boards she'd shoved against the door. He looked to be mid-40s, weathered face, 5 o'clock stubble, darkening a jaw that looked like it had been broken once long ago, tall, but with a slight limp in his left leg. He wore a faded green work jacket over a shirt that once had white collar but now looked grayish, and jeans torn at the knee. His hair was dark brown, streaked with gray, pulled into a short, low ponytail at the nape, like a man who used to be meticulous but had given up on refinement to survive. His skin was rough from sun, like he worked outdoors, or perhaps slept outdoors. His eyes were surprisingly soft, a deep, tired blue that suggested more suffering than cruelty. He knocked again, slower this time, and said with a low voice, "I know someone's in there. I saw the lights on." Emily didn't breathe for 5 seconds. She didn't know him. She didn't trust him. But he wasn't a vagrant scavenger. His voice was steady, tired, not threatening. He sounded like a person who had been broken and was just trying to exist. He spoke again. "My name's Cole." Then, quieter like confession, "I used to sleep here sometimes. I saw the door was open last night, but I didn't come in because I didn't want trouble." Emily processed that. He used to sleep here. Maybe he was the one leaving food. Maybe he was the one reading newspapers here. Cole spoke again. "I'm not here to steal. I just want to talk. This place," he paused, "has things in it." Emily forced her voice steady. "Who are you?" "Really?" Cole swallowed hard and said, "A man who has nowhere. A man whose family doesn't want him anymore." Something in his tone hit her like a bruise pressed. She understood that kind of abandonment. But she stayed silent. She didn't open the door. Cole said one last line that rattled her, "Whatever you think this building is, it's more than that. Be careful." Then he walked away slowly. Emily waited until his silhouette disappeared into the morning haze. Then she whispered to Rex, almost trembling, "We really aren't the only ones who know about this place." And now she had a warehouse key that would lead her deeper. Night in Savannah had a strange stillness, thicker than other places, as if the city itself liked to hold its breath before evil entered. The humid wind pushed through the cracked shutters of the old library, rustling loose pages into soft whispers. Emily Carter felt that tension in her chest again, her heart beating too fast for a woman 7 months pregnant, her hand instinctively covering her belly as if she could shield her unborn daughter from the world by pressing her palm there. Rex, the German shepherd with the golden brown fur and black saddle, 4 years old and sharp as a blade in both instinct and attention, sat close body, stiff eyes fixed on the main door. Something wasn't right. He smelled someone. He recognized the same cologne scent he had learned to fear. Mark had arrived in Savannah. Emily's ex-husband, Mark Hamilton, who was now 32, 6'2", with the kind of lean, athletic build that once looked handsome when she first met him, now looked predatory because she finally saw the truth behind his angles. His jaw sharp and almost perfect, like it was carved by an expensive sculptor, always clenched like he carried fury as his default state. His sandy hair was styled meticulously like a politician who needed to look clean in photos, his blue eyes bright but cold like refrigerator glass, and he carried himself like a man who believed every public space belonged to him. He had been raised in a family where men never apologized, where his father, an ex-military officer, taught him that control was the only language men needed. His cruelty didn't arrive all at once. It seeped gradually until it drowned her life. And now, after she escaped, he did what every abuser eventually does. He hunted her. Emily had been careful. She had left no note. She had left at night. And yet Mark found her. Because people like him always believed nothing could exist outside their control. He didn't travel alone. At a hotel near River Street, Mark met with a private investigator, someone he hired illegally because legally he wasn't allowed to stalk her. This PI was a thin rat-like man in his late 40s named Trent Foster. Trent had a wiry frame, grayish skin from too many cigarettes, and cheap coffee thinning black hair combed sideways with more desperation than success, and a pair of glasses always smudged like he never bothered to clean them. He spoke fast, sharp eyes darting constantly like a raccoon scavenging for scraps. He'd been thrown out of his last licensed agency years ago for tampering with evidence. This was the kind of man who sold information to whoever paid most. But there was someone else. Someone even more dangerous than Mark or Trent. A small network of antique smugglers had been hunting for Warehouse 17, the same warehouse connected to the key Emily now hid under her shirt. This network was led by a man named Vincent Hale. Vincent was around 51, with a permanent tan from years on docks, dark brown eyes that looked almost black under dim light, a shaved head that gleamed like polished stone, and a thick neck like an old bull. His nose had been broken at least twice, leaning slightly left, and he wore expensive leather gloves even during summer because he hated leaving fingerprints. Vincent was a man who carried calm the way hurricanes carry silence before landfall, dangerous measured patient. He believed that knowledge was power, and power belonged in his safe, not museums. For 5 years, Vincent had tried to buy information on the old Carter maps. He believed there was something hidden in the warehouse that would make him God in the black market world of stolen artifacts. Tonight, all of them existed in Savannah at the same time. None of them saw each other yet. But all of them moved like wolves circling the same prey. Inside the library, Emily tried to calm her breathing. She had placed a heavy wooden dresser and an oak bookshelf against the front door after she returned from the second floor earlier. But tonight, the sound that broke her was the faint, unmistakable clack of a lockpick. Someone outside was picking her door. Not knocking gently like Cole did earlier. This one was breaking in. Rex growled, slow and low like thunder rolling across the ground. Emily pressed both hands on the dresser, pushing it harder against the door, but she was not strong enough. She felt her abdominal muscles tighten, not from fear alone, but from a contraction that came too early. "Not now," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not now. Please." The baby responded with a kick which only escalated Emily's panic. Because the body has no respect for storyline, it only reacts to threat. The lock snapped. The bookshelf shook. Emily gasped, stepping back, holding her lower stomach as anxiety triggered her uterus into spasms. The door cracked open 2 inches before Rex lunged and slammed his weight against it, barking with explosive violence that shattered the silence of the old building. On the other side, a man cursed Emily, recognized the voice instantly. Mark. Mark snarled. "Emily, open this damn door. I know you're in there." His voice was not the charming public voice. It was the raw, unmasked voice he used when no one was watching. Emily's blood ran cold. She tasted metal in her mouth. Then another voice whispered behind Mark, this one calmer, precise. "Vincent!" "Push again," Vincent ordered, "or I'll do it." Even Mark hesitated, because Vincent Hale spoke with a tone that said violence was just another tool. Emily's knees almost buckled. She grabbed the safe, hidden under her shirt like it was a shield. Suddenly, upstairs footsteps creaked. Emily froze. Cole. He had returned. Cole's steps were slow but heavy. He was in the house. He appeared at the top of the stairs, looking rougher in morning gray. Cole's face had that defeated sadness again, but tonight there was intensity behind his eyes. He whispered, "They found you." Emily nodded, tears forming. Cole said nothing else. He only moved down the stairs with a quiet speed, grabbed a metal pipe from the corner, and took position beside Rex. Emily had no idea if Cole was trustworthy, only that tonight she needed every ally breathing. The door jerked violently. The dresser slid back an inch. Rex barked again and again, deep and savage, protecting his human with ancient canine purpose. Emily screamed, her voice cracking with pure terror. "Leave. All of you leave." But the men outside would not leave. They were here for the safe she carried. They were here to take from her again. Cole held the metal pipe like a baseball bat, ready to swing. He whispered to Emily, without looking back, "You need to breathe slower, or you'll send yourself into labor." Emily forced herself to inhale through her nose, exhale through her mouth. Her legs shook. Another contraction clawed at her. Suddenly, sirens. Not close, but close enough that Vincent backed away first. Then Mark cursed again, furious like an animal denied a kill. They ran. She heard their footsteps retreating. The door stopped moving. The lockpick dropped. Emily collapsed against Rex, sobbing into his fur, her whole body shaking, her belly tightening again in warning rhythm. Cole knelt slowly beside her, his rough voice softer than anything she could understand. "You have to choose your next step very fast. Emily Carter, those men aren't done. They'll be back." Emily could only whisper, voice, hollow voice, shattered, "I almost lost her tonight." Cole nodded once, his jaw tightened. "Then the next time they come, we have to be ready before they arrive." The morning after the attack felt unreal, like the world had been smeared with a soft filter, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if Emily Carter would break or rise. The old building on Oglethorpe Avenue smelled of dust and adrenaline, the air still flavored with the echo of fear that lingered in her lungs. Emily looked older in the light, not in years, but in experience. 28, pale skin bruised by sleeplessness, long brown hair tangled and unbrushed stomach round with 7 months of life. She felt every heartbeat of her unborn daughter beating inside her like a small fist pounding from the future. She had a choice now. She could remain trapped, a ghost in her own bloodline's ruin, or she could open the world and show people what her ancestor hid. And suddenly, she did not just want to survive, she wanted truth to outlive all the men who tried to steal her future. Cole sat on the torn velvet chair near the window, chewing on cold canned beans, with the quiet resignation of a man who had known hunger long enough to accept any food as blessing. His face looked rougher in daylight, 40-something, with the coarse stubble along his jawskin tanned like sun-baked leather eyes, blue and rimmed with grief. He confessed earlier that he once had a daughter, but after his divorce and his spiraling unemployment addiction to painkillers destroyed his marriage. That memory was carved into his face, as permanent as a scar. Rex lay beside him, head resting on Emily's ankle, golden brown fur rising with each shallow breath, and his black saddle marking gleaming in the light. Emily whispered, as if saying the words out loud might shatter her nerve. "We take it to the museum. Today." Cole lifted his eyes. He asked nothing, only nodded once. That was the entire conversation. Rex thumped his tail gently as if signaling agreement. Emily took the safe, wrapped it in a towel, placed it inside an old satchel she found in the back closet. Before they left, Emily wrote one sentence with a black marker on the wall behind a bookshelf where no one could see, "I choose to end the darkness here." Then, she and Cole walked out that door with Rex leading not like fugitives but like witnesses. At the Savannah History Museum, an elderly historian named Eleanor Graves received them. Eleanor was 72, but walked with elegant posture, straight spine, chin, slightly up silver hair styled in a soft pageboy cut, and light powder makeup that softened the harsh lines of age on her ivory-pale skin. She wore a cream blouse tucked into high-waisted charcoal slacks and a pair of sensible black loafers. She moved with dignity, hands, steady eyes, sharp with the kind of curiosity that academics preserved long after retirement. Eleanor was the kind of woman who never raised her voice because her knowledge was its own authority. And when Emily placed the maps and the key and the letters on the giant mahogany table in the museum's private archival room, she watched Eleanor's face change. Eleanor removed her glasses with a trembling hand and whispered, "Dear God, these are real blockade codes from the Civil War." She cleared her throat. "Emily, this is not just a personal family relic. This is national history." They called the police next. Detective Amy Winslow arrived within 40 minutes. Amy was in her mid-30s, biracial, with deep brown skin and tight natural curls tied into a small bun that emphasized the seriousness of her profile. She wore navy trousers and a fitted blazer with her badge clipped to the lapel. She spoke calmly with a measured tone, her brown eyes scanning every detail of Emily's story. Amy had a scar near her left eyebrow, a thin, pale line earned during a domestic violence response call 8 years earlier, and ever since then she had taken cases like Emily's personally. She wrote down every name Emily spoke: Mark Hamilton, Trent Foster, Vincent Hale. Within 24 hours, the network fell apart like rotted rope. Vincent Hale was arrested in a seedy motel off the highway, still wearing those expensive leather gloves. Trent was caught leaving the city, his trunk stuffed with surveillance photos that tied him to stalking. Mark was arrested after he attempted to bribe an officer for information about Emily's whereabouts. Emily watched from a distance when she signed the victim statement. She didn't speak to Mark. She didn't need to. His eyes said everything he could not believe she broke the control. That disbelief was his prison now, not hers. 1 month later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Emily went into labor. Cole was in the waiting room, pacing like a caged tiger. His eyes were full of protectiveness, fear, guilt, like he had failed his own daughter before, but maybe he could help Emily protect hers. Rex waited with him, sitting perfectly calm but with muscles tense, ears twitching whenever the elevator dinged. Inside the bright white delivery room of Memorial Hospital, Savannah, Emily gave birth to a baby girl with a head full of dark brown hair and a cry that sounded like the first proclamation of a sovereign queen reclaiming her land. Emily named her Nora, because in Old Hebrew and Latin roots, Nora meant light. 3 months later, the old building on Oglethorpe Avenue was undergoing full restoration. The museum and city government sponsored the repairs. They hired workers to sand the floors, restore shelves, reinforce beams. They left certain sections intact, like the worn banister and cracked stained glass window, to preserve the scars of memory. The building became part museum, part community reading room, part women's shelter support center. Emily volunteered there twice a week, helping women like herself find legal aid safe spaces, new directions. She wore simple blue jeans, loose cardigans, her long brown hair brushed and sometimes braided over one shoulder, her pale skin glowing now that fear was no longer draining her blood like poison. She looked like someone who had been dragged through the darkest hallways of life but somehow crawled out with her child held high. Cole worked there too. He shaved the stubble, cut his hair, got a part-time job organizing old documents. His limp remained, but his posture changed. He held his shoulders up again. He had become guardian of a legacy he once only slept inside. He lived in a small rented room above a diner, no longer houseless. Sometimes he read history books between tasks. He attended AA meetings. He began fixing himself quietly. Rex lay every day by the porch, golden fur catching the sunlight ears. Perked for living threats, watching watchers. He had become the quiet guardian of mother and child, the dog who never faltered in devotion. Emily often stood outside holding Nora to her chest, breathing the scent of fresh restored wood, watching the Spanish moss sway like green silk in the Georgia breeze. She whispered to her daughter, "We don't run anymore. We build." She understood now that heritage did not come from broken bloodlines. Heritage came from choice. Her ancestor hid truth in walls. She brought truth back into the light. That was her legacy. In the end, this story isn't really about a hidden safe or a secret map or men chasing a pregnant woman through the night. It's about the quiet and holy truth that sometimes the miracles we pray for are not loud dramatic or wrapped in shining light. Sometimes the miracle is simply the strength God places in a tired woman's heart, so she can finally say no more and step out of darkness with her child in her arms. Sometimes God's greatest work is not changing the world around us, but changing something inside us so we can walk away from what was killing us and walk toward a future we thought we didn't deserve. Every small act of courage, every time you choose to protect your peace, every time you choose truth over fear, every time you choose life over pain, that is a miracle too. If you're watching this tonight, may God pour peace into your life. May He place protection around you and your family, and may He give you the strength to leave anything that harms you, and the faith to walk boldly into the next chapter He has written for you. If this story touched you in any way, please share it with someone who needs strength. Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel, and may God bless every single viewer who hears these words tonight and always.